Call work session to order. I got an item that's not on the agenda. I'd like to introduce Matt Wright. For those that don't know or those that haven't met, he's the new planning and building coordinator for the city. So, Matt Wright.
He gets his own table, look at him.
I know, he's special, right in the middle. All right, items for review and discussion. A, senior center grant.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Have an update on our current senior center grant for fiscal year 2022. The MARC fiscal year runs differently than the city's fiscal year. So we're still in 2022. Mid-America Regional has made available an extra $1,167 that we are able to take advantage of for the rest of this fiscal year. There'll be an ordinance coming to the next city council meeting to accept the remainder, or to accept that extra money. Just, please approve it. We want an extra $1,100.
Any questions? Extra money's good.
Additionally, next year's, the fiscal year 2023 senior center grant has been applied for, and we should hear about it in May. So sometime probably the end of May meeting, that information will be coming to you to accept that grant, as I'm assuming that we will be awarded it.
Cool. Any questions? Item B, mobile vendors.
Currently, our code section on mobile vendor business licenses and also ice cream truck business licenses state that mobile vendors participating in city-sponsored events or the farmers market are exempt from city licensure. This has been a historical practice, and it's typically because a participation fee in the event is seen to be in lieu of a business license. Unfortunately, this practice has caused a lot of confusion for vendors and for business owners when a vendor comes from out of town into town to do an event that the city sponsors. Then the vendor believes that they can routinely do business here in town when they actually can't because they don't have a business license. I am requesting the City Council's consideration of a code amendment to delete these two exemptions from the city code for mobile vendors and for ice cream trucks. To operate in the city, they would need to have a city business license. It will clear confusion of vendors and for business owners and will simplify the process for staff. If you would be willing to consider that at the next council meeting.
Go ahead.
How much is the business license?
It's currently $70 for mobile vendors, which is the same price as our regular business licenses. Ice cream trucks do have a reduced business license fee of $25, and then each person who comes into town to drive a truck has to have a permit of $15, so they have a total $40 license fee.
I think the only concern I have is I know we have one vendor that works Fall Festival and only Fall Festival, and I would feel like $70 might make them disappear. So that would just be my concern on that.
Brett?
And
go ahead.
this would be for mobile vendors. It wouldn't be for the shops who set up a table at Fall Festival to sell their handmade jewelry or things of that nature. It would primarily food trucks, but I don't want to say food trucks because there are mobile vendor retailers.
Theirs is a food truck.
But it's primarily geared toward food trucks.
Go ahead, Brett.
Isn't there also some differences between those that were coming to the city versus those that have to have a... This has already started, hasn't it? Isn't there some also differences in that some of the businesses are struggling with the city license, finding food trucks with city license versus ones that currently don't have to have city license because of the code for city?
I'm not sure I completely understand, but the only exemption for mobile vendors to not have a business license is if they're participating in a city-sponsored event like Fall Festival or coming in to do one of the car shows or if they're part of the farmers market.
But what's the difference in requirements? Are all the same requirements that they have to fulfill?
If they're coming in, if they're coming in for an event, then it's up to the sponsor to make whatever requirement is their requirement. Mobile vendors in Cass County are required to have a Cass County health permit, and also mobile vendors in the KC Metro are required to have them Heart of America fire permit.
So you can go to any fire department and get a certificate. They're metro-wide. I wish the health department would get that way. It would make it a lot easier. Go ahead.
Andrea,
Oh.
how does that cost compare to other cities? I know that at the winery, they have to have a license for peculiar to be down there, and we've lost some people because of that, and I'm not sure what their price is, and Angela's right. If you just come down like once a year or something, you may not want to do it, and I don't think theirs is that high. Do you know what others are?
Off the top of my head, I don't know what the surrounding cities' costs are for business licenses. There are some cities that require it per how much you make in a year or how many employees you have versus a standard fee like we have.
Isn't that different though than a business license where you hear all year versus just a mobile truck coming down once? I mean, do we have the same price for both?
We don't have any differentiation. A license is a license.
Can you check on that in the next 2 weeks? Prices?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, all right.
Oh, well, once they have a license, they can come back anytime after that. I mean, if they happen to pay the fall festival $70 so they can serve the fall festival, then they could come for other events, farmers market, the brewery, whoever. And I don't want to sound cavalier, but if they're really that good that they have to be there for the fall festival is big enough they can kick in and help with their paying the permit.
Yeah, the issue that we've came across is there's several businesses here that want to use food trucks, but for whatever reasons, they can't get the good food trucks. But then they look and see that when we have Fall Festival, the parks, all the food trucks come. Well, we found out that all the food trucks don't have to pay because of city sponsored, so it's not fair to the other people that want to use food trucks. So that's kind of why we're wanting to change this. So yeah, looking at the price, maybe that might be an option. We could lower it for a mobile, when it's not an everyday thing. So look at that this next 2 weeks, and we'll go from there.
Yep.
Anybody else? James, you got anything?
Nope.
Thank you.
All right, item C, Y Highway Marketplace Contract Amendment.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The Y Highway Marketplace TIF is the TIF contract for the crossroads at Belton, which is lovingly referred to as the new price chopper. And within each TIF contract, there are construction completion deadlines. This particular contract has 5 project areas, and project areas 2 and 3, which are the pad sites right next to Arvest Bank and the pad site behind Arvest Bank, currently have a construction completion date of May 31st, 2022. Y58 Partners LLC has requested an amendment to extend the construction timeline for 2 years to May 31st, 2024. An ordinance to amend the TIF contract will be on the council agenda for the May 10th meeting, and David Christie of Christie Development will be present at that meeting to provide council with an update on his leasing initiatives.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I did want to add to let you all know that the developer in control of this project does owe the city $32,134.05, and that has been owed to the city since the end of 2018.
Angela?
If the amendment weren't extended, what would happen with the TIF?
If the amendment were not extended, so the city of Belton has some reimbursable costs with that TIF, so it's not just the developer that is being reimbursed. So from a city perspective, the city would not see any more money to be reimbursed.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Brett.
Can we tie the $32,000 they owe us to the amendment.
I'd like to introduce Sid Douglas.
Sid, you're up.
Just ready to go. Just got a red light on.
It should be.
Hello. Okay. The question is about tying the two together. Is that what the question was? Okay. The original redevelopment contract that was, I guess we're on our third developer, I guess, from the original project. There is nothing in the contract about requiring the developer to be in compliance with other development projects for payments that they owe to the city. There's nothing that would say that that would be a default. That there is the possibility you could just say, we're not going to provide this extension unless you do make a payment. And it leads us into the problems that Carolyn discussed, is there's more than monies that are just owed to the developer. There's monies that owed to the city. It becomes very messy at that point about making sure that the city is entitled to get their funds. But the only way we would have, the only remedy that you really have at that point is to declare a default under the agreement and terminate the redevelopment contract, and then that creates quite a mess. It's over the $32,000. I know that it's been owed for a significant period of time. I do think there are other ways that that if you wanted to exert a little bit more influence or pressure on the developer that owns that project has several projects in the city, and he's entitled to reimbursement from revenues that are created over time that have been certified that he has not been paid. So I think maybe rather than tying the approval of the extension to the payment of the fees, it may be a little bit easier just to withhold that amount out of amounts that are due to the developer for reimbursement of project costs, so that we've certified these costs, there's revenues to pay these costs, but you owe us this amount, so you get this amount, we're going to deduct out the $32,000, and we're going to call it good at that point. That way we don't create a real mess with the development contract. But I think that might be a little bit more, or an easier way to potentially solve this problem than holding up the extension on the TIF amendment itself. It's just an alternative idea to be discussed.
So since you're standing there, I understand what you just said. Are you okay with this extension?
I'm okay with the extension, and I've had several conversations with Carolyn and Sheila, and just trying to figure out how's the best way to do this. We've talked about just if the developer would come forward with another project, say we're not going to consider anything, because there's been a lot of things that he's brought to the city as potential projects, as we're just not going to consider this until this outstanding bill is resolved. Just waiting for those opportunities. As Sheila just said, it's been outstanding for almost going on 4 years. I really think maybe the better way to just kind of bring it to a head is there will be revenues to reimburse the developer. He's got a couple of different projects that he's entitled to money. Just say you're entitled to this payment, but we're withholding this amount because you owe us money. And see if we can't get it resolved that way. I know there have been some discussions.
Yeah, so to update the council about what's going on here, myself and Mayor Pro Tem Clark and Carolyn Yatsik had a meeting with this developer about this outstanding debt, and his interpretation is that it's going back to prior administration promised him stuff and that they didn't deliver, and that he didn't feel that he had to pay for it. So, long story short, he agreed to pay for half of it, and his partner didn't want to pay for the other half. So, but then to kind of find out I don't even think we can do that. I don't even think we can take half of it after talking to Sheila and Patrick, so that's kinda where we're at with it, so. Do you wanna add anything to that?
I think he lost his partner, right? Or he's not partners anymore?
Not partners with him or something, yeah, so he don't have a clawback to go to his partner to get hit their half, so.
I would like to add that there's different versions of that story.
No, absolutely, absolutely.
So I
I'm
understand
I'm just telling everybody here what his side of it is, so.
Yep.
So,
That's correct. That is his version of the story, and he didn't deliver what he was supposed to on that project
Yep.
that didn't proceed forward. It was a prior administration, but, you know, there's two sides to that story,
oh,
too.
no.
Right.
So,
I guess my take is, I mean, yeah, he owes us money and it's been 4 years, but I don't think I wanna make him upset to move away and not finish some of our projects he is working on either, too. So, I mean, I just think it's one of those we keep reminding him that he owes us. 'Cause I think the project that he owes us on, he has some plans over there too, and I think that's when we can really get him. So, I mean, I don't know.
I say we just keep plugging away at him and go from there, but don't tie it with this, you know, so. Any other questions on C? All right, thank you, sir. D, North Scott Corridor Plan Presentation.
So I'm going to provide a background and some historical context about the North Scott Corridor Plan from 2014 and then the subsequent overlay district and design guidelines that was adopted in 2017. So just as a visual, and these can all be found on our website, this is the original North Scott Corridor Plan. And in 2014, here we go. So just to kind of explain, like, where did the North Scott Corridor Plan come from? In 2014, City Council was working to improve the primary gateways to Belton. Belton, Grandview, and MoDOT were in a cost-share agreement for the complete reconstruction of the 155th Street interchange to accommodate increased traffic from I-49.
Carolyn, hold on a second. Jordan, can you put it up on this screen here? All right, go ahead.
Okay, all right. To accommodate the increased traffic from I-49 and what was at that time Centerpoint Intermodal. The project was expected to be completed by 2016. We also knew that the interchange project was going to be complemented by the complete reconstruction of 155th Street on both sides of the interchange itself. Kansas City, Missouri, obviously on the west side, and then a cost share between Belton and Grandview on the east side. Additionally, ground was broken on the all-new Markey Parkway, and there was excitement about the long-range plan to connect Markey Parkway to North Scott, which would provide, you can kind of see it right there where the long-range plan, and it still is a long-range plan, by the way, but at the time, what was occurring at 155th Street and then the Markey Parkway groundbreaking, we just thought it would spur some definite economic development to, or that the corridor would, by making that east-west connection right there in the middle of the corridor itself. So I'm going to go back to that slide there. There was a desire to capitalize on the economic development synergies that were occurring. The 2-mile corridor of commercial, industrial, and residential uses served as a vital part of the city's economy. However, it had begun to show signs of age, vacant buildings, lack of maintenance, blight, and diminished property values. And although North Scott historically served the day-to-day needs of the community, much of the retail shopping had moved to the newer commercial centers to the east. Several businesses do continue to prosper on North Scott. But city officials were committed to the revitalization of the corridor, and funds were allocated to the Community and Economic Development Department to hire a planning consultant in order to proactively plan for a positive future for North Scott. After an extensive selection process in 2014, including a request for qualifications and a request for proposals, a committee of staff, a planning commission member, and a member of city council selected Confluence, a nationally recognized planning and design firm, to oversee the effort of a community-driven plan to engage stakeholders and community members in creating a vision to guide the corridor's future. The consultant began meeting with staff over several weeks and helped develop a list of advisory committee members and a general framework for the development of the corridor plan. The advisory committee was comprised of just under 30 residents who had direct influence to provide guidance to the project. The committee was made up of business owners, property owners, neighborhood residents, elected and appointed officials, and commercial real estate agents. This committee served as a resource for the planning team to identify issues, evaluate concepts, and provide direction and input. Community members were also engaged in this process to ensure that their issues and observations were identified and addressed as part of the plan recommendations. This included 2 public meetings and outreach via the city's website for a survey. City council, city staff, Confluence, the advisory committee, and the community worked together to establish a future vision for the corridor. The goals of the study goals, or the goals of the study, were to create a strategy to encourage diverse growth on the corridor, to strengthen existing businesses, and to enhance the corridor's image. The planning process took 5 months. The advisory committee met 3 times. A public visioning workshop for concept alternatives was held. A public open house was held to gather community input. Planning Commission recommended approval in January of 2015, and the plan itself was adopted by City Council via ordinance in January of 2015. The advisory committee and citizens were all asked questions. Confluence created 3 different word clouds as a concise visual way to share the responses. So the first question was, how do you see North Scott? And as you can see on the word cloud, there's a lot of words, but the top words: old, dirty, rundown, ugly, blighted, and trashy. How would you like to see North Scott in the future? Again, another word cloud as an exhibit. The top words being clean, safe, attractive, bright, inviting, and vibrant. Then the question was asked, what is missing on North Scott? And the top answers were restaurants, retail, shopping, green space, entertainment, and a grocery store. And I did put on at the dais for each of you a word cloud for all of these. The advisory committee and involved citizens engaged in group planning exercises. Groups focused on land use concepts and selected their preferred locations for residential, industrial, retail, and green space uses. The planning team met with the advisory committee to discuss, and the 5 land use concepts were created. Once activities were completed, a series of 3 refined land use concepts were developed. The planning team presented those concepts to the advisory committee, and members provided comments and suggestions. The final concept selected as the preferred land use won by a large margin. So next steps after this plan itself, there were 7 next steps, and some of which we have made some headway on and some of which we are currently working on. So the first is to extend Markey Parkway from the Quick Trip Distribution Center where it ends over to North Scott, which is what I referred to earlier. So Greg, our Public Works Director, has applied for a grant to make that connection, and we should find out sometime this summer if we receive that or not. Identify economic development tools for the corridor, and we are contemplating the use of a CID for the corridor or some other tool. Another step that was recommended from the plan was to improve Belton's North Gateway with the new interchange and the new 155th Street and then the county coming in and purchasing the Welcome Inn, I think we're off to a great start on improving Belton's North Gateway. Another next step that was recommended was to create a streetscape master plan. This will begin in 2023 with the $2 million grant and the city match. $3 million will be spent to reconstruct the North Scott Road itself, rehab the curbs and sidewalks, add on-street bike lanes, and provide green space as we can. Other next steps that were suggested were to explore rail-to-trail and park opportunities and develop design guidelines. So that is, in a nutshell, the 2014 plan itself. So I am about to go over the overlay district and design guidelines, so I'd like to stop here and see if anybody has any questions before I continue.
Go ahead.
I guess my question is the extending Markey Parkway. I mean, I guess it'd be nice to have that connection there, but we have, I mean, it is connected to North Scott when you come down. I don't even know what that road's called is over there. I call it Quick Trip Way still, but I know it's not on that side of town.
There is absolutely a way to cut over there and get there, but
I mean, you just go around instead of coming through where Masters and Quick Trip is. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, cutting in and come to
Yes.
Markey Parkway. You just go around the corner and come back up. I mean, is that something we really need
well,
still?
it's been a long-range plan of the city to have Markey Parkway connect from where it begins at Mullen Road and to have it go all the way through to Prospect so that we can have a secondary. Right now, we only have 58 as a east-west corridor throughout the city. So I guess it depends on who you ask if it's needed
I just
or
know
not.
there's a business right there that would have to be eliminated for that to actually work, so if you're gonna really connect them, so I mean, I come up that road all the time, so I just was trying to figure out if we really need that connection, but that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, the way I read this, I think this is the basis for what you just presented, is, is that originally in this plan, it was planned to keep 4 lanes north of Markey Parkway or Markey Road to 155th on North Scott. So that plan changed when we got a grant to go to 3 lanes. What else has changed? Well, Markey Road,
Yeah.
where the credit union is, north,
Yes.
it's 4 lanes now, and this says,
Yes.
leave it 4 lanes, and yet,
now the
we've
grant
got a
we got.
grant now to make it 3 lanes, so I'm asking, that changed, what other changes have been made
The-
to the plan, or if any?
There have been no other changes made to the plan except that, and we did receive a grant for that.
Work.
Yeah.
So this isn't really, I mean, I know it's a plan, but, and I know that we have codes that now back it up, which I guess you get into next, but it's not cast in concrete. I mean, if something better comes along, this can be tweaked.
It's a guide for
Okay.
future development.
Gotcha, thank you.
Go ahead.
Have we had any contact back with that advisory board? Do we know how many still own property on North Scott? How many are still in favor of this plan?
I have not talked to the advisory committee.
Thank you.
I'll say if you put those names back up there, I can tell you most of them. I know Gordon Light's still there, I know Raymond Myers is still there. Dave Moore still owns that building down there, I believe, and he works down there.
Rockman's still
Unfortunately,
there.
Pat's not around, Connie's still around, Odin's still around, Bill Brackman's still here. Kevin Owens still around, Eckert owns a building, Teresa Bradley owns a building, Mike Johnson owns a building, Mellinger still owns a building or 2. Wiedemann's still there. So Marion Biondo, yeah, so majority of those people are still owning businesses on North Scott. Some I really don't know who they are. There's a couple there.
All right, go ahead, keep going.
All right. So now we'll get into the overlay district and design guidelines, which are essentially phase 2 of the North Scott Corridor Plan and was also prepared by Confluence. The North Scott Corridor Overlay District and Design Guidelines were designed to accommodate a wide mix of quality multifamily residential, commercial businesses, and light industrial uses that are compatible in a highly visible urban setting. The intent of the Overlay District and design guidelines provide for a uniform and enhanced set of site design standards, building design standards, and permitted uses. It defines the boundary of the overlay district. It defines the zoning and land use table. It defines the design guidelines and is the implementation tool for the revitalization plan. Drilling down into the details. So site design standards, which are listed on the screen, provide guidance for the general layout and design of the site itself within the overlay district. I'm not going to read all of them that are on the screen, but some of the standards include things as parking and circulation, landscaping and buffering, and outdoor storage. The document also includes building design standards, which establish basic parameters for building design that preserve and enhance building and property values, are long-lasting, resistant to deterioration, and maintain their visual appearance over time. They are all listed on the screen, and I'll mention just a few. Pedestrian access, building architectural design standards, articulation of facades, windows and doors, and building materials. The document also includes a table of uses. The table of uses identifies uses for each of the underlying zoning districts that are compatible with the goals and intent of the original North Scott Corridor Plan. And the table matches Chapter 40 of the city's Unified Development Code. The table is for residential, public and civic, commercial, industrial, and other uses. Uses not listed as permitted, subject to conditions, or subject to a special use permit are prohibited. It concludes with legal non-conforming properties, which are previously existing properties. It is the intent for those buildings and uses that don't comply with the overlay district and design standards to over time be brought into compliance with these guidelines as they redevelop or when reinvestment is made to the site or to the building. And this is an overview of the approval process that this overlay district and design guidelines went through. The Planning Commission reviewed the draft overlay at a work session in March, June, July, and August of 2017. And in August of 2017, the Planning Commission endorsed the draft plan and recommended approval unanimously to the City Council. In September of 2017, the City Council reviewed the draft plan and passed a resolution in support of the draft plan, but directed that the plan go back to the Planning Commission and have the Planning Commission convene a public hearing on the plan. Also, to obtain public input and complete a final review and final recommendation to City Council. The 2014 Advisory Committee was also personally invited to the public hearing. The Planning Commission convened a public hearing in October of 2017. At that meeting, no one spoke in favor of or opposition to and the Planning Commission recommended approval. City Council then adopted the overlay district and design guidelines by ordinance in November of 2017 after a 9-month approval process. And that concludes my presentation on the design guidelines and overlay district.
Any questions?
I guess a second change, since this has been adding Southview to the North Scott development area, correct? Okay, so we've had 2 huge changes since 2014. Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand. So for property that isn't developed yet, does it go under current zoning or does it go on the plan?
So property that is not developed yet is obviously it's zoned whatever it is zoned. But if somebody is wanting to develop on that property, then the property would be rezoned to the North Scott Corridor Plan zone, the future land use map.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none. E, Bradford Traffic Study Results Presentation.
Good evening. I'd like to talk briefly about the Bradford and Given traffic study that we have done. There's been a lot of interest about the intersection. We have taken several counts over there, and I want to present the basically our findings from the traffic study. So from our traffic study, I want to let you know what we're looking for at first. We're looking for speed and the speed limits to make sure they're both correct. We're looking at traffic counts. We're looking at traffic control devices, which is basically in this area is just signing. And we're asked to look at traffic calming. Those are the 4 things we're going to look at here very briefly. So the goal for speed and speed limits is to always make sure the speed limit is set at the 85th percentile. So what we do is we actually go out and we check the speed of every car that goes down the road over a period of time, and then you put it in percentages. So 50% of the people are going this speed, 60, 70, 80, 85, 90, 100% is everybody. And so it's been proven over time by many different studies, by different agencies, from the federal agencies to states to locals, that the 85th percentile is the safest speed to travel. So when we look at Bradford, we did Bradford over several days, and I've plotted out here the 80th, 85th, 90th, 95th, and 100th speed. And so you can look at 85th speed day after day after day. It's somewhere between 26 and 26.6. I think Councilman Powell just looked to the 100th and saw that someone went 62.7. And so when we get to the next one, you'll be even more surprised. But there is someone once a day who is driving over 60 miles an hour who clearly is not stopping at the stop signs and is going through the intersection. And I've given that time of day to the police so they know when to kind of be looking. When we look at Given, we did Given over several days too. Given the 85th percent. What?
70.7. Sorry. Keep going. We're talking out loud. Sorry.
So on Given, the 85th percentile is 24.1, almost exactly every single day. So people are traveling the same speeds there every day. And one of the questions I know people ask is when the stop sign at Price Chopper was removed, was there any difference? Well, when it was there, it was 23 miles an hour, and when it was removed, it was 24 miles an hour. So it's virtually the same. Nothing really changed on speed since that stop sign was removed. You will note that one person, and it was at 10 o'clock in the morning in the 10 o'clock hour, went 70.7 miles per hour down Given. And so they had to have a pretty good running start, or they're driving something really fast. Before we go on, that'll tell you that the speed limits that are out there are very well set. The people are following the speeds, except for 1 or 2 people. And so I feel there's very good compliance with the speed that's out there. When you go to our traffic counts, they always vary day to day. But you can see there's somewhere on Bradford, somewhere about 700 cars per day. On Given, the count's a little higher. It's closer to about 900 on a day-to-day basis. And someone asked me the question about, has it changed since they started doing construction? Because I took this during the construction. The counts were very, very similar to before construction to now. The number was about 800, and now it's about somewhere about 900. So there's about 100 cars a day difference on Given. Bradford was about exactly the same. So most of the increase in traffic on Given is people who are going into the neighborhood and not going up Bradford. So the traffic on Bradford has been about the same pre-construction to construction that was up there now. So the question comes, we start looking at manual and uniform traffic control devices. Are the traffic control proper at that intersection? So this is what warrants a four-way stop. And it tells you, you can put up a four-way stop. If you're about to put up a traffic signal, you can go ahead and put up a four-way stop while you're building the traffic signal. That intersection doesn't qualify for a traffic signal. No one's looking for a traffic signal there. So that warrant doesn't work. 5 or more reportable accidents in a 12-month period in which a four-way stop could have prevented them. And those are generally the right turn to left turn collisions as some right angles. This intersection hasn't had any accident problems, so it doesn't qualify under B. Under C, we get into minimum traffic counts, and you have to have 300 cars for 8 hours on the major street, which would be Given, and then on the minor street, which would be Bradford, has to have 200 cars per hour. Well, those streets only had between 700 and 800 cars a day, so there's no way they can even come close to meeting the volume warrant. The last thing you can do, if the 85th percentile speed is above 40 miles per hour, which it's not, you could actually do a reduction on those numbers. So it doesn't actually have the volumes to have a four-way stop. So this is backed up by what the police did. The police went out and started viewing people who were not stopping at the stop signs. So why are people not stopping at the stop sign when they're going eastbound to north or southbound to westbound? It's because the stop signs aren't warranted. So if you perceive as a driver a stop sign doesn't need to be there, or you go to a traffic signal and you look and there's nobody there, and you wait for the turn and people drive through them, that's because they're not warranted. So people know this. You've driven a long time, why is this here? And they go through it. So in this particular case, this is another example where the police went out and checked and people are running the stop sign. It's not warranted. The volumes don't call for it. So that's a major reason that people run that stop sign. So the recommendation would be,
Yeah, please.
the recommendation would be to replace the southbound and eastbound stop signs with yield signs. So you approach the intersection. If you don't see anything there, you can just proceed on. And so if you're headed eastbound, you don't perceive anything, you make the turn, you can head northbound. For most drivers, it's probably not a change in any of their driving habits or what they're doing today. The last portion we're going to talk about is traffic calming. Traffic calming is something that a couple of you brought to me. So traffic calming is the implementation of traffic calming measures can reduce traffic speed, reduce motor vehicle collisions, and improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists. That's what the goal is. The overall goal is to get the 85th percentile speed between 25 miles per hour and 35 miles per hour. That's what the goal of traffic calming is. This intersection is already within that goal. And so there won't be a large change to the average speed because the average speed's already in that zone. It's actually at the very bottom of the zone. Traffic calming is not introduced to reduce traffic volumes. It's not to get people not to come in my neighborhood. It's to reduce the speed in the neighborhood. And so in this particular neighborhood, I don't think you could actually reduce the speeds any more than what they are right now. Now there's the one gentleman who's going 70 miles an hour. Yes, he will get reduced. But overall, it's not going to change it. But I know people ask, if you're going to install a traffic calming device, what would you install in this neighborhood? Well, before I get there, here's all the list from IT. IT is the Institute of Transportation Engineers, and they've created all these different ways of modifying or doing a traffic calming. And so I'm not going to go through them all. We could spend all night here talking about those. But how do we choose a traffic calming device? The traffic study will show the direction of speed, and the geometrics of the road will lay out what is possible. Not all traffic calming items can fit in every different type of roadway. Like in this particular case, we're not going to build a roundabout in that intersection. You have to buy all 4 houses in order to install that. So both must be present to make the traffic calming work. You have to have the right location with the right device. So in this case, in a neighborhood like this, the most popular thing is a speed hump. Now, it's not a speed bump. A lot of people talk about speed bumps that people want, and that's something that we just don't do. A speed hump is something that's actually 14 feet long and 3 inches tall. And when you approach it, people will slow down to 25 miles an hour. Since everybody's going about 25 miles an hour, there's not really much slowdown. You go up and over it, and it'll have signs right at the hump. This one I took off the internet, does not have signs at it, but you have a sign that says speed hump at it, and then before it'll say speed hump ahead to warn people that that's there in front of you. And this is something that we can put in the neighborhood to slow people as they approach the neighborhood. Before we put one in, we want to make sure everybody wants it. And so we would say we'd want a petition signed by 80% of the residents in the subdivision, and the property owners that it would go in front of, they must say, yes, I want this in front of my house. If they don't, I mean, it's just not going to work out well. And the subdivision also must agree that if they don't want this after 3 months or 6 months, they have to pay to remove it, because it does cost money to put these in. And like I've said before at different public meetings, that I have seen where over 50% of them come out within just a few months. In this particular case, you would want to do one in Given. That would be somewhere just past where Price Chopper is. I put the dot there because that's a spot where there's a blank on both sides and not a driveway on each side. On the other side, on Bradford, it'd probably be before Mallory. So as people approach the neighborhood, you'd have the speed hump to put in your mind, hey, I need to slow down in this neighborhood. And so that would be the recommended locations that you would put them. And so that is the information I have for you this evening.
Go ahead, Brett.
Well, could you go back where you had the counts? Because you said, I think 300 in an 8-hour period, and you had 900. I mean, okay, you
That's
can
a
look
day.
at that and say that average is 700, but you got, if you take the top three, you're averaging about over 900, and take 900 divided by 3, that's over 3, that is 300, and I think that was your criteria, 300,
That's 900 cars in a day.
yeah. All right, 900 cars in 24 hours divided by 3 is not 300 in 8 hours, if I did the math right. And
Divided
that
by
was your
9.
criteria, 300 cars in an 8-hour period. And in fact,
It's 300 cars per hour for 8 solid hours.
oh,
So you have to have 2,400 cars just in that 8-hour period.
okay.
So your
okay.
traffic count needs to be somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000.
So we're talking like Y Highway, we're not talking,
Correct.
I didn't understand you, sorry. Well, the second question is, we've talked several times about speed tables and not speed humps. Can you describe for the audience the difference and why you've settled on this as a possible alternative?
Well, I can't blow this picture up for you, but in this neighborhood, there's only sidewalks on one side of the street. And sidewalks need to connect to other sidewalks. So if you put up a speed table to connect, and that is basically where a crosswalk across mid-block, and you'd raise it up that same 3 inches, and it would connect between one side of the road and the other side of the road. But that connection has to be from a sidewalk to another sidewalk. And there's only sidewalks on one side.
There are 2 sidewalks that connect across from each other, at Mallory and because my house is on the corner of Mallory and Bradford, and I have a crosswalk on one side and goes across the other side of the street. And then down at Given and Bradford, there's also, because I walk my dog that way, so there's also sidewalks on both sides.
And normally, the speed table is put in mid-block. It's not put in an intersection. So when you go to an intersection, they actually raise the whole intersection. And that gets into a major construction project, raising the whole intersection to make a speed table for the whole intersection.
All right.
So, back at the, I gotta turn this thing back on. Back at the town hall meeting, you had met with a couple of people and me, and we talked about getting Bradford together and that you would present information. So, can we go ahead now then schedule that?
The mayor mentioned that,
We're
so
working on that. That was what I was gonna say. We're working on that right now. So getting that scheduled.
Okay.
So probably later in May, sometime late May.
I just wanted to ask.
So if this 80% does approve, there's no other hoops that the neighborhood has to jump through to get this on the agenda, other than, I guess, money, even though I think we have some money to do it.
We just need to make sure that the property owners that it's in front of
Sure,
are
yeah.
okay with it.
Yeah, right.
Now,
Go ahead.
the one that you're coming in on Bradford, there's no property owners. Well, I guess that's not true. You got the post office, and then you got Caliber Collision.
Right, and we would, I was gonna go over there and look exactly where it could be and then have to talk to Caliber Collision and the postmaster, just make sure everyone's okay.
But they wouldn't be classified as part of the 80%.
No.
Okay.
We're just trying to find a place to put it.
Okay.
Guess my question to you, since you live over there, you have an HOA? How you guys gonna fund this if you want them taken out? I mean, you guys gotta put up money somehow. I don't know what the cost is, but if we put them in and like Greg says, you guys have to pay for them to be removed, that funding has to be put up front in my mind. So if they've been,
Think so?
Yeah.
If we're getting 80% of the people saying, yes, we want them, and that we will not move them, then we're not moving. So
but
we
if
don't
in
need to
6
have-
months they wanna remove because they don't like them, it's said up there that you guys have to pay for it.
That's correct, but you're assuming that we're not gonna wanna move them. And I'm saying that we're not gonna move them. If 80% of the people say we want them, we will be under the impression that.
Well, I
need
think
to
they
stay.
should know if they want them removed, they have to fund that. The city's not gonna pay for it.
Okay,
They need to know that up front too.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, you get some of those backside streets back here, Taylor, and some of those other ones in the very back, they probably don't care what happens on Bradford or Given.
We've gotten emails from Taylor and those other streets too, so they're for this. But I'd ask Greg too, you said 50% of the time they come out within a few months. Is that even where just a few months before 80% of the residents approved them?
Yes.
Well,
I'm just telling you what happens. I don't mean to be
Well, I
the
know,
bearer of bad
I'm
news.
not
I'm just telling you.
I'm not questioning that. I don't have any data, but it just sounds weird that 80% would want them and then a couple months they don't.
Well, it's easy to say you want them until you have them. But I think it has to be, it has to be really discussed. And that's why I want a good meeting with you there, to be able to show this. But there's a lot of people that want them.
Go ahead, Perry.
Greg, just quickly, how much does this cost to do the study you did?
The study, I just did it myself.
Okay. Good.
All right, anybody else? So just to reiterate what what was said a while ago, we are planning on doing a town hall, I guess, probably later in May. Sometime we're working on that now. We're going to send letters to every homeowner and occupant. That way they all get a document saying when it's gonna be. That way there's no discrepancy where they didn't know about it. So that'll probably be later in May sometime, so. All right, moving on. F, street reconstruction projects.
As you all know, the bond did pass, and so I want to let you know that we are putting out for bid 2 projects. One is a concrete project to do curbs, and one is to do paving. And we will be putting those out to bid shortly, and we'll be coming back hopefully by the end of May to get approval for that contract so we can start work.
Any questions? Seeing none, item G, flow study for water line replacement.
As part of the bonds or the questions that were asked to do water line work, the first thing we need to do is actually a water pressure study, and that will tell us what size lines need to be replaced with what size lines. A lot of them are 4-inch lines, and you just assume they'd be 8-inch lines, but we want to actually do the update of the pressure study. We actually have one, but it's several years old, so we're going to redo it. There's also a couple places where there's ties that are missing, so we don't have a circular loop, and we want to find which loops we need to make sure we have sufficient pressure throughout the city. So we'll be bringing that to you here before long.
Any questions? H, water line design projects.
We are going to start designing a couple water line jobs that are in conflict with the street reconstruction program. So we need to get those water lines done before we can pave the street, because I hate to pave the street, then cut it open, put a water line in. So you're going to be seeing a couple of contracts to do a couple water lines to get those done out of the way.
I, brine system and pump equipment.
So one of the next steps at our facility is to actually build a brine system. Brine is that salt and water that we put out right before a storm to prevent the snow and ice from bonding with the pavement. Right now what we use is a very small tank that our crews made themselves, and it's not very efficient. They did a fantastic job, don't get me wrong, and it's worked well. But we want to update it to an actual true brine system where we can have multiple chemicals. You've probably heard where people use calcium chloride and use sugars or beet juice, it's just sugars. And so we're going to build a system that have 3 different tanks so that we can have all the different chemicals depending on temperature. So right now salt brine just itself only works to 26 degrees. This allows us to add calcium chloride, and then we can take it down to 13 degrees. Then we can add sugars to it. Sugar actually activates the salt even more, just kind of like in your body. If you're sensitive to sugar and you take salt, it affects you, or if you're sensitive to salt and you eat sugar, it affects you. So we're going to be building that brine system. So the first thing we'll have is we're going to be purchasing the equipment, which will be a brine and a pump, and then we're going to build a concrete detention area to put the tanks in, so if a tank breaks, the salt doesn't escape. And then we'll be bringing you a contract to put the building on top to enclose it. I'd be happy to answer any questions about it.
Seeing none, J, sanitary sewer design.
In this year's budget, we have money in the sanitary sewer area to design a sewer that goes from Little Blue, that's up in the Port Authority area, and bring that pipe all the way down to Markey Parkway and swing it over toward Prospect. That pipe is to help get us another connection, get more flow, and improve development in the area. So we'll be bringing a contract to you for the design of that project.
Any questions?
What area was that again?
The connection to Little Blue is actually in the Port Authority. If you go up, is it Botts Road on the west side of the golf course,
Right.
and it curls up, and right about in the middle of the Port Authority is where Little Blue has its intake. So Kansas City has a connection there, and we want to make a connection there so we can actually put waste to that, and not, because right now we're pumping it all the way across town to the northeast corner of town. This will just allow us to take it right to that location.
Cool. All right.
K, Mark, Operation Greenlight.
Operation Greenlight came to us. They'd like to have an agreement. We want to improve our cameras so they're actually that you can pan, tilt, and zoom and do more things with the cameras. But since it's only $2,000, but since it's an intergovernment agreement, I have to bring it to you for approval. So I'll be bringing that to you next time.
Go ahead, Rob.
Way off the subject, but since you're talking and doing a good job, what are all the white marks on the streets, at least east of Maine, all the way over to QT and, you know, A, B, C, C, D, commercial, B, C, D streets? They're on the streets themselves. They're not flags in people's yards, you know?
Well, if they're on the streets themselves, it's usually utility companies marking streets.
Okay.
And
Okay,
that's what
yeah.
usually, and every color stands for a different type of utility that's out there.
The white is,
I don't know, usually white's been done by Public Works, so I'll have to find out what they're marking out.
oh, maybe it's just somebody with a can of white paint making some.
Angela, go ahead.
I think there were white lines over in Ward 2 as well that ended up being AT&T. Is that not a possibility?
It could be. There's actually a third company that goes out and actually marks streets. So like AT&T and those companies don't mark streets. There's another company that goes, actually there's 2 of them, that go out and mark streets. And that's why they're supposed to mark them in specific colors so you know what utility's underneath.
All right, item M, or L, use tax.
This is actually on the agenda as a request from the last council meeting by city council. So it's your agenda item.
So, yeah, so what do we wanna do? Have you guys thought about this? Do you wanna put it back on as soon as we can?
Just my suggestion would be if we're putting this back on for August, is to assemble a steering committee that will transition to an oversight committee in advance, so that when we put together educational materials for the public, the kinds of projects listed are better aligned with what voters want to see. That would be my suggestion.
You have any thoughts?
I think if we put it on August, we're gonna really have to pick it up fast and get it out there, because you really gotta educate the people on this. And I don't think they were educated in the last one. So,
Perry?
You're right, Chris, but there was other items, so it was one amongst four.
Yeah.
I think if you dwelled on the one, it would really help a lot, and I think you ought to go forward with it too.
I'm good with moving forward. I think Sheila said Raymor's gonna put it on the August ballot again, so you'll hear a lot more from the area about it, and
Their council is still discussing it. I contacted their city manager and just to make sure that they were in fact putting it on there. They actually have another discussion on it on May 2nd. So there is a possibility that it might not end up on the August ballot. Just wanted you guys to know.
I mean, even if they're not, I mean, I think we got the closest we have ever got, and just if we keep educating people on the process and what it's all about, I think we just need to keep moving forward.
Brett?
For some reason, I just have reservations, and I can't articulate why, but I can't sit back and not say something, so.
Well, I'm for it, and I'll go along with doing it in August or whenever. I'd like to see it pass, but talking to a lot of people, I think the people that voted no did their homework. I mean, they may have came to the wrong conclusion, but they did a lot of work, and they're just not saying, "Oh, I'm against every tax," and voted no. They know what a use tax is, and they don't want it. So I don't know if any more education will turn them around. I think it's more of getting a lot of the people who sat at home on their butts and get them to the polls and get them to vote yes.
Angela?
I support it with Allison's changes to make sure that there is a new direction.
James?
I support it as well.
All right.
Mayor, I think if people were to understand what you may lose if we don't get it passed, with the trend going this way of people buying on the internet, it's not actually a new tax, it's just getting what you've already been paying all the time. That's the education you're gonna have to get.
So, as well, I'm in support of putting it on in August. I think we can educate the citizens better. I think we did a good job. I think in 18, when the city tried to do it, it lost by 630 votes. And then this last time we were down to only 95, losing by. So I think we did a good job. I think we had 4 issues, and we couldn't focus on all 4 of them like we needed to. So, I think with some better education and a single issue, I think we can be successful. So I'll support it being on August too. So it sounds like everybody but one wants to do it in August, so prepare for that.
Just to be clear, just a date to keep in mind is that final certification of that will have to occur on May 24th, which is the date of the second.
No. So we'll bring an ordinance and we'll put it on for
A double read.
double read on May 10th, because if you guys don't approve both readings at the next meeting, you wouldn't have it passed in time to get it on the ballot.
Sheila just jumped to what I was getting to,
So it has to be done by the 24th?
which would mean it would have to be to the county during the day on the 24th. So we
Yes.
couldn't wait till the night.
Okay.
And then also, the other thing just to keep in mind, and I'm not picking on you, Councilmember Goff, we cannot describe it as not a new tax. That was one of the statutory changes made in the past legislative session, is that any materials and any communications coming from the city cannot describe the use tax as not a new tax.
So the city cannot educate that way. City council does not, as individuals, does not have the same prohibition.
The city can't say it's not a new tax. You can say it's not a new tax, but the city as a body can't say that.
So can you answer a question? How can the state put that on and vote for it without us voting for it, but we can't do that?
I'm not sure. I haven't looked into that issue before.
Okay.
Probably because of the state and they already have it.
But they had to go out
I
and
know.
legislatively, they did it. It wasn't voted on by the people like the county or.
So if you think back, I don't know when the state of Missouri maybe enacted their use tax. They might have-
2012, I think it was.
They could have already had it even predating that, because there also are quite a few cities that we work with. For example, the city of Gladstone's had a use tax since the 80s. And it's just always been on the books, but nothing was really ever generated from it prior to kind of some of the big changes in Amazon and, big construction projects occurring there. But I don't know the facts surrounding the state of Missouri.
Anybody else? Item M, Health Forward Foundation Community Advisory Committee.
Yes, at your guys' dais, I put some information about this, the Health Forward Foundation. They contacted me because our mayor needs to make a recommendation when they appoint to their community advisory committee. And I'm not sure how it's been handled in the past. They've been in existence for a while, but I've been doing some research. And the Health Forward Foundation, their mission is to work every day to support and build inclusive, powerful, and healthy communities characterized by racial equity and economically just systems. Since its inception in 2005, the foundation aims to support and build communities that advance the health of all who live in their service area, especially people who, because of social and political factors, are challenged to access resources that help them live healthy lives. Cass County is included in the geographical funding area for the foundation as established by the Missouri Attorney General. And governance for the foundation includes both a board of directors and this community advisory committee. And the community advisory committee members are appointed by the recommendation of the mayors in the counties included in the service area. And so the CEO of this foundation has received an application from a very qualified person that they would like for the mayor to make a recommendation that this person get appointed. And so on at your next meeting agenda, there will be a resolution that is authorizing the mayor to make that recommendation. The individual, and I think I'm just gonna include their resume in the packet, but her name's Arlene Martinez, and Miss Thomason, she is the CEO. She has interviewed this applicant and thinks that it's a very good applicant and is looking for the mayor's recommendation.
Go ahead.
Well, if you have any questions about the Healthcare Foundation, I can answer them, because I was the liaison for the city of Belton for 6 years.
I had no idea.
And I think Lisa Peak was the last one, but I don't know. So we've always had a liaison. So Kenny Southwick was the person I took the spot of. And so so we used to have a healthcare organization called Health Midwest here in Kansas City, and when they were a not-for-profit organization, and when they sold out to HCA, they had to create a foundation, and all the proceeds of that not-for-profit went into the healthcare foundation. Now it's called Health Forward. When I was there, it was Healthcare Foundation of Kansas City. So everybody, so Cass County, like Harrisonville has a member, Belton has a member. So everywhere there was a Health Midwest hospital, each person has a member. So we have one as far out as Iola, Kansas, and there's also one from Lafayette, Missouri, because they had an HCA facility, or they do have an HCA facility. So the dental, the child's dental program down here was actually funded partly from the Health Forward Foundation. So they're always looking for places in Cass County to spend money, because we are definitely a place that doesn't get served with that foundation like we should be. So if we have someone interested, that's good to hear.
So you were a liaison, were you actually on the community action?
I was on the
Advise-
Community Advisory Committee for 6 years. I was appointed by Jimmy Odom.
Okay,
I was actually de-appointed by Gary Lathrop in his 3 months of interim, and then got reappointed by Jeff Davis when that Lathrop's appointment didn't want to go down there. So I've been appointed and de-appointed. It's kind of funny, but yeah.
Any other questions? Item N, general obligation bond issuance.
yes. So the next 3 meetings, we are getting ready to issue $9 million of the street bonds that voters just approved. The reason that we're doing only $9 million of the $21 million is because we're going to do it into 2 separate issues. You need to spend those proceeds within 3 years. Greg's kind of working on a plan and trying to marry it with the plan of the water line replacement. We don't want to spend a lot of money reconstructing a road and then have to tear it up in order to replace water lines. And so that's kind of a tricky situation, and he's working on that. Although we are in a situation with rising interest rates. And right now, if we can issue the $9 million, we will be able to do that bank qualified, which just means that we're a small issuer. So we'll get special treatment. It might generate maybe 0.25% less interest rate for us. In order to qualify for that financing, you can't issue more than $10 million in a calendar year. And so that's why we are picking $9 million. The park has already issued a little bit of debt this year for a lease purchase on exercise equipment. And I don't anticipate that we will issue any more. However, we would have a little room if there was a different lease purchase that the city needed to enter into. So at the next meeting, there will be a go-to-market resolution on the consent agenda. And then that will be followed on May 31st for a first read of the bond parameter ordinance. And on June 14th, we will have the second read of that ordinance. The competitive bond sale is anticipated to occur on June 20th, and we would close on July 12th. And the day that we close, that's when the city will get our project funds.
Any questions? Seeing none, adjourn the work session.
Mayor,
Oh, sorry.
can I clarify a statement that I made about the use tax?
Sure, absolutely.
I'm for the use tax. I'm hesitant about August. That's what I want to
Okay.
clarify.
I figured that, and I assumed that, so I wasn't reading anything else into that, so. All right, so we'll adjourn the work session, and we're gonna take a short recess. Councilmember Richardson. Roll call, please.
Mayor Larkey,
Here.
Councilmember White.
Here.
Councilmember Powell,
Here.
Councilmember Pryan,
Here.
Councilmember Kraft,
Here.
Councilmember Clark.
Here.
Councilmember Goff.
Here.
Councilmember Lawson.
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
We have a quorum. Personal appearances. A, Danny Chevalier.
Hi, I'm Dan Chevalier. I'm here to ask you for a consideration for an amendment on the North Scott corridor over to allow me to put some warehouses in. I watched the presentation earlier. I was not one of the selected few on that committee, even though I'm one of the largest property owners. I did attend the first meeting because of Jim Oden and Dave Morris. They pulled up and took me to it. I inquired not too long after that about being notified of meetings and so forth. I'm not sure I remember who I talked to, but I was told if they needed my services, they would contact me. So I never attended any more meetings. And was ever notified of any sort, what was going on. I would have had probably a little different input to it if it amounted to anything or not. Like I said, I'm one of the bigger property owners with 20 vacant acres on the North Sky Corridor area. I think the only people bigger would be the Quick and Tasty ground. What I'm proposing to do is storage units. I've been leaning on, they're called storage garages. Raymore has some on 58 Highway. The front of the building is all just facade. You pull in and there are 20 by 50 units under one roof. They have a landscape package down the side. They don't have bathrooms, water, just lights. So they're just supposed to be used for storage. There is a men and women's bathroom by the office. It's got the same keypad as your key to get into your entry unit. I've had this ground, started acquiring it in '92 and been building up more acreage to it ever since. I developed a street on it in 2000, started on it in 2000. We finally got it compacted to the point of there's a lot of fill there in 2002. The newspaper did a pretty good article on me finishing the street, and basically it was a build it they'll come story. And there's been 20 years now. The only buildings that have been built is the one I built on the end of Elmira and the Dollar General that I'm aware of. The only construction that's been going on. And I just trying to utilize the road and the street for something. I look at my notes here. There is a concrete plant at the end of the street, so that minimizes a lot of usage for the property. My brother and myself looked at doing a car wash at the first lots when you first come in years ago, 15 years ago. It came back as about a 20% survival. Obviously, they built the one next door. It's changed hands 5, 6 times that I'm aware of. There's still a lot of empty buildings on North Scott. Of course, a lot of them have run down even worse. And I just don't know what else I can do there. I'm gonna plan on keeping the first 3 lots as you come in for a better venture, if there is somebody interested in something, when you first pull in the road right there. On the east side of Elmira Street, I have 4 vacant lots. I'd like to build 2,500 square foot buildings on those. The plans are being drawn right now. I just don't have them. They'll be consisting of about $350,000 apiece. The storage units total will be around $2.5 to $3 million when it's all said and done. I'm not asking for any tax exempt money. I'm only going to employ 2 or 3 people. I buy about $100,000 worth of material and supplies from Belton monthly. That'd be the only sales tax contribution I really have for that part of it, I'm afraid. The buildings will be in earth tone color, nice landscape packages. The units facing the streets will have some kind of stone or stucco is what I have in mind. And if needed, I own the property on North Scott from the motorcycle shop clear to 1,200, we could put a row of trees or whatever there to keep the visual sight down if that's an issue. Of course, the city has final approval on all plans anyway, on that kind of stuff. There's 4 storage units, counting the one on 155th, all up North Scott's area right there. They're full and trying to expand. The place in Raymore with the storage units, I called them, they are 6 months to a year out for any kind of vacancies for those contractor garages, they call them. So there's demand for them. With all the new apartment buildings being built, there's gonna be a demand. These apartment storage units rather are full now. They got waiting list. So there's definitely a demand for them. And so I would like consideration of an amendment to the North Scott, like I said, corridor. Some of the people I saw listed all ago are deceased and no longer own property on North Scott. But regardless, that's already been pushed through. Another problem that's coming up is a concrete plant at the end of my street. In 2023, they got a different EPA restrictions for washout pits. They're wanting to purchase a little bit piece of ground to be able to put the pit on. If not, they're gonna have to be forced to go down and use their upper area where they have aggregates, and they're gonna be forced to get down to 2 trucks instead of their 6 to 8. They expand, they would like to go to 8 trucks.
It's been 5 minutes.
Pardon me?
It's been 5 minutes.
I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
All right, question that I have for Patrick. He's requesting a change in what I was told in the past that by the former planning and development person that the council would have to approve that change.
Yes,
How do we proceed with that process?
I think further discussion on this, since currently we're just under personal appearances, we could wait until council communications.
Okay.
And there could be some more discussion on it then, and figure out exactly what the city council may be willing to propose to go to the planning commission for a public hearing and then back up to the city council.
Got it. Consent agenda. One motion non-debatable to approve the recommendations noted. Any member of the council may ask for an item to be taken from the consent agenda for discussion and separate action.
Present.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Regular agenda A, a motion approving final reading of Bill 2022-17.
An ordinance authorizing the taxable revenue bonds NP Belton Residential Project Apartments, Series 2022, related to a commercial development project in the city, and authorizing the city to enter into certain agreements and take other certain actions.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
White,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item B, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2022-18.
An ordinance approving the 10th Amendment to the Old Town Belton Redevelopment Plan to approve the 514 D Street project as Redevelopment Project 2022-02 and to authorize tax abatement as described therein.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Richardson,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey.
Aye. Motion carries. Item C, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2022-19.
An ordinance approving a final plat for Autumn Ridge 4th Plat, a tract of land in part of the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 13, Township 46, Range 33, in the city of Belton, Cass County, Missouri, and authorizing the mayor and city clerk to sign the plat for recording with the Cass County Recorder's Office.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Powell,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item D, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2022-20.
An ordinance determining and declaring the necessity of acquiring for public use temporary construction easements, permanent easements for roadway drainage and sanitary sewer improvements, and right-of-way road for the construction and maintenance of certain improvements to the city's roads network generally located near 58 Highway and Powell Parkway in the city of Belton, Missouri, authorizing the city and its designees to negotiate for the purpose of acquiring the easements and property acquisition by contract or condemnation, and authorizing the city attorney and his designees to institute condemnation proceedings if such interest in land that cannot be acquired by purchase through good faith negotiations.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing and hearing none?
Mayor Larkey.
Oh, hold on. Go ahead.
How long does this process take?
It certainly depends. I think this project has an expedited timeline. So Greg and I have a call tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. to finalize the timeline for the acquisition.
All right, thank you.
Any other? Seeing and hearing none? Roll call.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
Councilmember Goff,
Aye.
Pryan,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Richardson,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
Kraft.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item E, motion approving the final reading of Bill 2022-21.
An ordinance determining and declaring the necessity of acquiring for public use temporary construction easements, permanent easements for roadway drainage and sanitary sewer improvements, and right-of-way road for the construction and maintenance of certain improvements to the city's roads network generally located near South Mullen Road and East Cambridge Road in the city of Belton, Missouri, authorizing the city and its designees to negotiate for the purpose of acquiring the easements and property acquisition by contract or condemnation, and authorizing the city attorney and his designees to institute condemnation proceedings if such interest in land that cannot be acquired by purchase through good faith negotiations.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Can we hear which quadrant of that intersection is the group that, or person that's objecting? Is that something that can be released?
It's in the southeast corner and the northwest corner.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Lawson,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
Richardson,
Aye.
Pryan,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey.
Aye. Motion carries. F, a motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-22.
An ordinance approving the Fourth Amendment to the Tax Increment Financing Contract between the City of Belton, Missouri and Menard, Inc. for implementation of the Southbound Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Plan as amended.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or information?
Sure. Mayor, yes, this is regarding the Menards TIF contract. It has two project areas. Of course, the Menards itself has been built out, so this discussion is regarding the outlots. And Menards has requested an amendment to extend that construction timeline for 2 years to May 31st of 2024. And Tom O'Neill, Sales and Leasing Representative for Menards, is present tonight to provide council with an update on leasing initiatives.
I'm Tom O'Neill with Menard Incorporated. For the record, the address is 5101 Menard Drive, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 54703.
You gotta say that slower, right?
What's that?
You gotta say that slower.
5101 Menard Drive, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, 54703. I'll slow down. Wanted to take this opportunity to come before council to request a further amendment. I handle sales and leasing efforts on behalf of Menards. I've been there long time, handled a lot of the acquisitions duties for a while, now working on sales and leasing. We have, I would say it was very limited activity as far as calls and interest in 2020. We fly our own flags in the property. We don't list the property from a selling side. A lot of the interest that we drive or generate is through calls that we make, as well as tenant brokers that are representing end users and calling in. So outset of COVID was a tough time for interest level. 2021 saw a market increase in activity level, both through hits to our menardsrealestate.com website, as well as continued phone calls in on the property. And we're starting to get some interest in the form of letters of intent out there. So hopefully, finally, we're going to see some activity. And we would just appreciate the city bearing with us a little further here in order to extend this out to get some development generated. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Thank you for taking your time to come and see us. Do you have any more, Carolyn?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. That was you got, okay, I'm just making sure because it was a long delay, so. Item G, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-23.
An ordinance of the City of Belton, Missouri, repealing Chapter 3, Section 3-24 of the Code of Ordinances, City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or information?
I can speak on this briefly.
Go ahead.
It was brought up at the last meeting of the potential of changing the food requirement for our retail by the drink liquor licenses.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
First reading.
Or, I'm sorry, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. Item H, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-24.
An ordinance approving an access agreement between the Port Authority of Kansas City, Port KC, and the Belton Fire Department.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or information? We've already covered it, but just in case. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, move for a second reading.
We have a motion for a second reading on item 2022-24. We have a motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of Bill 2022-24.
An ordinance approving an access agreement between the Port Authority of Kansas City, Port KC, and the Belton Fire Department.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lawson,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
Richardson,
Aye.
Pryan,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey.
Aye. Motion carries. Aye. Motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-25.
An ordinance approving a TIPS hotline contract with the Kansas City Metropolitan Crime Commission.
Present.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead.
Chief Lyons, I think last 2 weeks ago, you said how much we spend on this? Was it like $3,000 last year?
I think last year was 25. We raised it to 3,000. Most cities raise it on a regular basis, but we have not raised it in a long time.
Okay.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Move for a second reading, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second for a second reading on 2022-25. Any discussion?
She has to read it.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of Bill 2022-25.
An ordinance approving a TIPS hotline contract with the Kansas City Metropolitan Crime Commission.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Powell,
Aye.
White,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Motion carries. J, a motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-26.
An ordinance approving the reappropriation and revision of the City of Belton fiscal year 2023 adopted city budget.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just quickly, Mayor,
Go ahead.
I would say, did you do all that, Andrea? There was a lot of writing there.
That's
In
actually,
this one, oh
that's
no.
actually Sheila.
Was it Sheila?
Yeah.
They're very long.
I read it for a long time, but I finally slowed down. It's a lot of work.
Any information that we need to know that's not in there, or?
I mean, we talked about all this at the last work session. These are just projects that are being carried over from fiscal year 22 to fiscal year 23. This also includes $30,000 for the 150th birthday celebration. It includes adding the new city planner, and it includes amendment to all the fuel line items to estimate that gasoline will be $5 a gallon and diesel will be $5.50 a gallon.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
Motion for second reading.
We have a motion for a second reading.
I'll second so we can discuss it.
So we have a motion and a second for a second reading. Any discussion on the motion for a second reading? Just on the motion to do a second reading?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
My reasoning for asking for that second reading is the 150th birthday celebration is in planning stages, but we're halted until we get the budget approved, and we stand the possibility of losing vendors if we don't get this approved as soon as possible.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion approving the second reading of Bill 2022-26.
An ordinance approving the reappropriation and revision of the City of Belton fiscal year 2023 adopted city budget.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Pryan,
Aye.
Kraft,
Aye.
Powell,
Yes.
White,
Aye.
Goff,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Lawson,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, a motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-27.
An ordinance of the City of Belton amending Chapter 2 Administration, Article 2, Officers and Employees, Division 4 Personnel Code of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call. Or, hold on a minute, do you guys have any?
I just wanted to ask, I think this is the one where I read all through the red marks. We're getting rid of what we did a few weeks ago, which was to bring to the council any appeals. So now, if the gets to the city manager, then of any adverse effect on an employee, then they can't appeal any further. I guess their next step is actions outside the city. Is that the way it's interpreted?
Yes, that is the way that this amended personnel code would read, which tracks more generally with at-will employment in the state of Missouri.
Any other discussion? If Councilmember Powell is not done.
No,
Oh, you were thinking there, so I was making sure. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. L, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-28.
An ordinance amending sections 42-36, rates inside the city, 42-38, water rates for approved water districts or local governments, 42-39, rates for water consumed outside city, 42-296, sewer system user rates of the Unified Development Code of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion or information?
We discussed this at the last work session. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. M, motion approving the first reading of Bill 2022-29.
An ordinance amending Chapter 11, Health and Sanitation, Article 4, Solid Waste, Section 11-106C of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Belton, Missouri.
Present.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, information? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. City Council liaison reports. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick parks update. On Saturday morning, Mayor Pro Tem Clark was there. Councilmember Powell and I, am I missing anybody? Went to the Arbor Day tree planting at Memorial Park. They planted, I believe it's called a flash fire maple, in honor of former Councilmember Savage. And we talked a little bit about Memorial Park being a level 2 arboretum with 150 plus species. It was really neat. Someone from, I think, the Missouri Conservation came and gave out swamp white oaks. Anyway, it was really neat. That was great. And the car cruise that was planned to kick off the season for last Saturday got moved due to inclement weather, and it should be this Saturday. Fingers crossed, because I really love them, and I hope we get that done this weekend. So that's parks.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Ro.
April 18th, Planning Commission unanimously approved a final development plan for an Old Navy store and a Rack Room Shoes store at the southwest end of the Belton Gateway Shopping Center near Truman Road. And earlier during the consent agenda, I was moved to another committee, so I want to thank you guys for allowing me to serve the community as a member of the Planning Commission for the last year. I hope that James and Donald can continue to consider the neighborliness of new developments that they evaluate in the future. And also, something that got approved was the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee, and I noticed that I think I'm the only member of that committee right now, so we'll have a meeting tomorrow night, free beer. So.
You can argue with yourself there.
There you go. And I can say anything I want to about codes to my dog.
Yeah, we're working on those memberships, so you guys should have them at the next meeting, hopefully. So, I'll thank you for your year of service to that Planning and Zoning Committee, Mr. Powell. Thank you. I don't have any communications. City Manager?
Just a reminder that the city council photograph will be at 5 p.m. On May 10th.
Any more communication from City Council? I don't know who went up first. You go.
Well, like Councilwoman Lawson said, I got to do a proclamation at the Arbor Day Festival in honor of Tim Savage. I just don't know who writes those. So when I make you do double readings, I'm going to remember that, because that proclamation was long. Whereas, I need to put some whereas in your stuff, but no, I think it was good that they honored our late Tim Savage, who spent 20 years on city council, so it was good. And then the other thing I did is I got to go last night to the award ceremony for the seniors at the Belton High School, and Councilmember Powell was there also, and they gave away $450,000 to the graduating seniors last night. So kudos to the students and to the organizations that donate money. So it was a good night.
Councilman Goff.
There's just a couple of things I'd like to run by real quick that we can put on a work session or a Friday with you, Sheila. I got calls still regarding some issues at the North Point development with the neighbors back there that I could talk with you about. And also a call asking for a street light, or to be put in, not a street light, a stoplight put in at 163rd and Mullen. That's why I was asking you about the study you did, Greg. That is a really busy place, but I don't know if it warrants a light. Yeah, but people can't get off of Mullen onto 163rd. It was the request.
Traffic going 163rd Street.
I don't like it.
Maybe if you put a light out there for the fire department to come out of, and so they can get out.
By the fire station.
Right by the fire station, number 2 there.
We can always talk about it.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for, so, go ahead.
I just want to thank Councilmember Powell for his time on the Planning Commission. I appreciate your methodology. I appreciate your dedication to doing a good job. And even if the votes didn't always support your findings, I appreciate how you went about it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Rob.
Well, don't read anything into this, because I'm not complaining, I'm just asking a question, but, the cruise nights were all pre-approved, and now there's one that got moved to another date. So is that pre-approved in their contract or something, or did you have to go through the whole deal of getting everybody to sign a checklist, or what's the deal with that? How did that work?
They did ask permission to move it, but it's a city event.
So
I
we're gonna discuss this whole
Yes, please.
event thing sometime, okay. I just wondered how you handled that.
Didn't they always have a rain date in their request?
They did have rain dates and inclement weather dates in their request. This one is outside the scope of what they would have done because there was already something else planned for that particular day. But they did notify us before they officially changed it.
Okay. I'm just always curious how you do so many things, so. Thank you.
So is she. Anybody else?
Still have time to write proclamations.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry I missed that, tree.
You don't even read them here, though. You make like, you said Tulsa had to read them.
Well, that's 'cause I got that authority. That's one authority I have. That's why you read it and I didn't. So, yeah, I apologize I was out of town, a little vacation, but, yeah, just, again, God bless Tim Savage and thank you. Go ahead.
I know we were gonna discuss more on the North Scott Corridor Plan, on the amendment, and I would just like to say that I fully support that amendment.
So, hold on a minute. You said it so fast. So, hold your thought. Does anybody else have any other communications besides the North Scott Corridor Plan? All right, so go ahead, start over. So we'll go to that. That was on my list. I was just making sure everybody got everything else out of the way.
Yeah, no problem. I was just saying that I fully support amending that for that business
Okay,
to be developed. I would like to see more development on North Scott.
so go ahead. How do we proceed with this process?
so
since I
one-
don't think it's ever been
I
done
think
before.
instead it would be a motion directing city staff to analyze and prepare the necessary documents to approve an amendment to the North Scott overlay, because there's a couple things that are gonna need to occur, specifically regarding uses, not only in the North Scott overlay, but then generally. The proposed use is only allowed in M1 throughout the city. It hasn't been permitted on North Scott in quite a while. So we'll have to look into that, and then we'll also have to look into several other portions of the North Scott overlay if it is the city council's determination that mini storage facilities meeting certain building standard requirements are permitted. So that would be my proposed motion that the city council could make. And I can restate it, and I can try and go as slowly as I can. Okay.
I got most of it, but if you could say it, motion directing city staff to analyze and prepare appropriate documents
To amend
to amend.
the
The
North
North
Scott
okay.
overlay.
Got it.
So motioned?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I guess question I was gonna ask before the motion and the second was made, would that have this certain citizen bring a plan, or do we need to?
Well, so obviously you don't typically do spot zoning. You don't typically just change, you wouldn't change a text amendment for just one property. A text amendment would apply to all properties along, so this would allow for mini storage to occur along North Scott in every area if it is zoned properly. So in this case, I think what would most likely occur is first staff would analyze and prepare the documents to amend the North Scott overlay, and then the property owner could submit the necessary plans under the North Scott overlay and the UDC, which would include, in this case, I would probably guess a rezoning regardless, because I don't know how broad you guys are looking to get. Like, do you want to allow mini storage in C2 throughout the city? I mean, that would be a pretty, that is a pretty significant change. So then we would have to allow for mini storage in, again, I'm playing planner right now, looking
Yeah.
at Matt, begging him to jump in.
Let's get him to the microphone for the first time.
Yeah, so it would be, business park zoning is the most intensive zoning district in the North Scott overlay. But that's one step below what is allowed for, mini storage. So you would have to either look at adding M1 zoning into the North Scott overlay or allowing mini storage in the business park zoning in order to accommodate that.
Okay. Any other, go ahead.
Just have a general question about the process for something like this. Would we typically receive some sort of formal plan before we go down the road of preparing an amendment or analyzing it?
So the city council and the planning commission are the only two bodies that are authorized to prepare a text amendment. And this, I view this more, this is a text amendment. This is not a zoning map change. Zoning map changes are what are typically, again, the city council and the planning commission do have the authority to begin the process for a zoning map change. But that's what more here's a plan, that's what that is more directed at. Now, once this text amendment is completed, again, there'll still need to be a rezoning of this applicable property for, if just talking about this development, a preliminary development plan prepared, and then I think there's obviously some other requirements, but so this is just allowing this property owner to begin the process of submitting those documents that would then also need to be approved later on.
That makes sense. Any other discussion? Go ahead.
During the gentleman's
Microphone, please.
I'm close to it.
I know, but I got a text that you.
During the presentation of the gentleman, he mentioned the concrete plant too. And are those somewhat tied together?
Yeah, come on up. Yeah, come on up. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, come on up.
What was the question? Are they?
Somewhat tied together?
Yes. That'll depend on the plan and the emergency vehicle paths, whatever traffic ways they need. They're commonly 100 foot by 500 and a driveway between them sometimes. The ones in Peculiar, or Raymore rather, are probably 1,000 feet long.
But you had mentioned also that you were going, in 2023, I think, that would have to do something with the concrete plant, or is that part of this?
They're gonna need about an acre right across the street. They stage on me now. They park their trucks and wait to back in to get their concrete material and so forth. They're needing that half acre, 3/4 of an acre right there to continue their production. They keep their aggregates up top. If they, when this new EPA standard comes in, they'll have to use that area for a washout pit. It's basically a three-stage deal. The water's purified, clean when it comes out. That's why they gotta have it to meet EPA standards.
But that has nothing to do with your proposal.
No, it's just something that'll be coming up later if we
Something
want.
else
Yeah,
we'll
it's
have to
nothing to do with
address.
the storage units.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Well, I'm not quite sure who's doing what next, but when we do decide about altering or amending the plan or whatever, I think there should be more consideration about the difference between what's actually on North Scott and what's 1, 2, 3 blocks off of North Scott. I mean, I wouldn't vote for anything other than this North Scott plan. Now I'm digging my own grave, but I wouldn't, in other words, I don't think I would vote for another mini storage. It was right on North Scott, but this is off of North Scott. We've already made changes, we pointed out with Carolyn earlier, changes in the street, changes in accepting changing to allow North Point in, so the plan isn't casting, pardon the pun, casting concrete. And I think if we're gonna go this far in adjusting the plan, we should talk about, and maybe even alleviate some of the concerns of people who, during the elections, are always asking, when you gonna kick us out? And that comes exactly from all the residential mobile home parks, which are also off of the main corridor. So, anyway, just a comment.
I would note that again, the North Scott Overlay District does not do anything to any existing properties unless those properties are redeveloped or developed for the first time. So every person that lives in a mobile home that is subject to the North Scott Overlay, unless that mobile home is the owner of the property decides to demo it, the North Scott Overlay does not affect them.
All right, oh, go ahead.
I would just like to make one comment if I could. The change to the North Scott plan to go across the highway and add flex industrial across the highway, that was done in 2017, and it was not done to allow North Point to come. This was prior to North Point, and North Point came well after this document.
Go ahead.
Well, and I just want to clarify too that the amendment to the street design was due to a significant grant coming in. And I can't imagine this council being in the same position saying, no, we're going to stick with the plan. We don't want all these dollars to improve the street condition. So I'm just pushing back on your point that we've made exceptions or amendments previously without a lot of thought. There are different considerations for the grant and different considerations like you've just explained for North Point. So
we got
I
that-
kind of disagree with you.
Well, so we got that money without asking for it? It just came out of the sky?
No, but would you turn it down to improve the street conditions and pedestrian access?
No, go back a second and ask, would you have applied for it if you were on the council, if you knew that it was against a plan that had just been adopted a few years earlier? Or a major change to a plan that you just adopted?
What year did we get approved for the grant?
It was 2 years ago.
I mean, my biggest thing is this is an 8-year-old plan at this point, and so I am considering all of this, but to say that, oh, we've made exceptions and, there are logical reasons for those and broader reasons than a specific business request, and I would feel better discussing this and moving forward with an amendment if I understood the process better in terms of when we see actual plans for what the business owner wants to do, and maybe I just don't understand the process well enough.
So the motion that was made and directed, city staff will look at all options and take into account everything that was discussed tonight, and then we'll prepare documents that will then go, text amendments that will then go through the typical process. They will go to the planning commission, there will be a public hearing, everybody on North Scott will be allowed to come comment on whether or not to allow it. Then it would come back to the city council for the city council's final approval. Then once that is all approved, then if it, depending on what the city does, then the business owner would be able to come in and basically go through that process again with their specific business.
To answer your question, Rob, I would have supported us applying for a grant to get that money to improve North Scott, even if it went against this plan.
I did support it, so.
Go ahead, Angela.
to kind of piggyback off of Rob's idea, I do feel there are a lot of things within the North Scott corridor plan that should be kind of relooked at. It is an 8-year-old plan. How much have we actually accomplished during that 8 years other than Cass County purchasing the land from Welcome Inn and the grant for the street? I think those are great things, but I get a lot of complaints from business owners that they're not able to improve their buildings because of a coding rule. I also get complaints from people who are wanting to purchase land on North Scott that are being priced water retention numbers that are equal to the property land amount, and frustration from property owners that they can't sell their land because there's not anyone interested in that kind of zoning.
I'll just note, the North Scott Overlay District has nothing to do with water. That's the Marquee Regional Detention. That's a completely separate matter that some properties along North Scott are subject to. And again, it is an overlay plan, so I mean, the city council could direct city staff to review everything about it if you wanted to.
Go ahead.
I guess I'm gonna speak about plans, because having a plan gives you vision. And if you don't have any plans and you just start helter-skeltering stuff, that's what happened on North Scott. So we can sit here and beat up a plan that we didn't have anything to do, but I saw about 20 people up there that I know that has businesses still today that sat down here in 2014 and divide this plan. So for me to sit here and tell these people who took time out of their day that their plan and their ideas are wrong, I will not do that to them. Can it be tweaked by us? Sure it can. But to sit here and tell these people that they're ignorant and it's wrong, I don't want to say that. I mean, I think the problem with North Scott has always been helter-skelter. People threw up stuff. Most of our codes are because of those buildings on North Scott. And so if you don't want to follow a plan and a vision, I think you're wrong. And I tell everybody you're wrong. I mean, we have a vision, and I think we got to stick to it. We can make modifications, but I think we got to look at this plan that business owners on North Scott put together. We didn't do it. They did it.
Go ahead.
To those, the people that you mentioned, I've spoken with multiples of them, and they're no longer in support of that plan. So that's why I had asked if we had it, multiples around 5. So there were obviously more than 5 names. So my suggestion on that situation would be reaching back out to them and checking, seeing if this is still something they're interested in, since there's not been a lot of development in the last 8 years towards this plan.
Go ahead.
So the overlay district and design guidelines, that was 5 years ago. The plan itself was 8 years ago, but the actual document for the implementation was 5 years ago. And I do want to point out, I hear it all the time too, you know, it's not fast enough, but it's a long-range planning document, and nobody's more frustrated than I am about the lack of development. But I don't fault the overlay district and design guidelines for that.
And I do just want, sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
And I do want to remind everyone that the grant to make the road improvements will, I believe, make an impact and get things moving. And so every improvement that occurs along that corridor is just a catalyst to make more.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think we're there. I think we've got some things moving. I think we're there. I think it's going to start going. Go ahead, Councilman Powell.
Yeah, well, I just want to clarify, I agree with Dave. I think we need plans. I've had this plan ever since way before I was a council person, obviously. I got a copy of it in my on my computer and everything. I look at it frequently. I think it's a good deal. I think the Belton downtown overlay district is a good deal, good plan. My point, and I think it's a great deal to have the 1.9 million changes to North Scott. I was just using an example of showing that even though it's a plan, it can be changed. The city has changed the plan, and that doesn't mean that means to me that a little tweak here and there for somebody that's not even on North Scott is not an impossible situation. I think we can do that.
Anybody else? Do you want to read the motion again? So we did a lot of debating, so let's make sure everybody understands what the motion is. Yeah.
It's a little bit better than that. A motion directing city staff to analyze and prepare appropriate documents to amend the North Scott overlay.
Okay, any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, motion to enter an executive session, discuss matters pertaining to legal actions according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.1, and to discuss matters pertaining to leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate according to Missouri State Statute 610.021.2, and to discuss matters pertaining to hiring, firing, discipline, and promotion of personnel according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.3, and to discuss matters pertaining to negotiated contracts according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.12, and to discuss confidential or privileged communications between public governmental body and its auditor according to Missouri State Statute 610.21.17, and that the record be closed and the meeting adjourned from there. That was a
Second.
mouthful. We have a motion and a second.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Councilmember Richardson? Powell?
Yes?
Pryan?
Aye.
Kraft?
Aye.
Goff?
Aye.
White?
Aye.
Lawson?
Aye.
Clark?
Aye.
Mayor Larkey?
Aye. Motion carries.